be changed to try and accommodate him.
Is it a sign that there should be some wider reform of rural banking, that whole sector? The fact that he was able to borrow this amount of money, get to such a stage before the receivers did come in, and that has been a very protected process?
I would be very sceptical that's the case. I'd hate to see a banking system that was very rule-bound and very structured and regulated. So it actually comes back to how sensible the borrowers are as much as how sensible the lenders are. And that's a personal responsibility people need to take on themselves.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd agree entirely with you. I mean, the borrowers have a responsibility. They've got to be able to assess how good they're going to be able to manage the asset, whether they're going to meet their obligations. They have obviously determined that, and unfortunately it didn't work for Mr. Crafer.
So it all comes back to the individual.
Yes.
Well, thanks for that. Next up, we take to task or give praise to the movers and shakers in the ag sector. Welcome back. Now it's on to you beauty, praise or abolishing, the opposite. What do you have, Rod?
A very straightforward bollocking for Philip Gregan, Chief Executive of the Wine Industry Association, who said at a conference last week that he didn't really understand why we needed an ETS. Now, of all sectors in primary, the winemakers have demonstrated how you can take these resource and energy disciplines that an ETS is part of to drive great efficiency in the vineyard, but then also achieve a premium for the product in the supermarket in the UK. So for him to say that, is just to fly in the face of that logic, which is many of his own members are demonstrating to perfection.
Do you think he's just one on his own, or maybe there's a bit of an undercurrent of this attitude out there in other agricultural sectors? There
would be an undercurrent, more than an undercurrent, as we've seen from federated farmers, because it's just very hard to get that basic message across, that this is actually about astonishing new disciplines to drive resource and energy efficiency in all sectors, as we try to cope with environmental pressures and shift to more productive technology. And it's hard work trying to get that message across.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Brian, or do you think agriculture has generally picked up on this change of mindset that the ETS will bring?
I think so. I'm not an expert on whether it is or not, but my summation is yes, the agricultural sector has picked up on this quite well.
And Rod, I see that Prime Minister John Key is going down to Federated Farmers Conference in Invercargill at the end of the month. Do you think that might be a good time to possibly soften a little on some of the ETS targets?
There's not much more he can soften on because it's an incredibly weak and feeble ETS anyway. So if he softened any more, we might as well give up on the whole thing. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the politics of this play out. But it would actually be the worst place for him to make such a backtrack because I think it would cause a great alarm and concern elsewhere. For example, the forestry sector, which is only going to be planting more trees if it believes there is a market for carbon credits. And so we've got to have the subsequent legs of the ETS come into effect, starting with transportation fuels on July the 1st.
Right. Now, I believe you also have a beauty.
Indeed. 2 weeks ago, I was at the World Expo in Shanghai. As always, I took great pride and pleasure in seeing the New Zealand Pavilion. And twice running now, Ruth Pretty Catering from Wellington's been doing the VIP catering upstairs, and it's a very nice hospitality suite. It is absolutely...
You're in the VIP.
I was.
You're happy.
Yeah, I am. It's really important about how we present ourselves to the world, and that was, once again, the very best array of New Zealand food and wine, beautifully presented.
Now, Brian, I believe you've got some comments to make on the banks.
Yeah, on the banking. My bollocking would be, I'm very disappointed that the Prime Minister says that the government has to continue to own 100% the Kiwi Bank. Now, I'm a big opponent of what happened in the 80s with privatisation, and we're not talking about privatisation here, but banks need more capital, particularly under the suggested new international rules, and a good way to raise capital would be issuing new shares to the public. So the public would own, say, 20 or 30% of Kiwi Bank. The government would still still own 70%, but it would give the company more capital to be able to lend more to New Zealanders and would make it a stronger, more viable bank. And I'm disappointed that the Prime Minister has been so adamant that he won't accept outside shareholding, albeit the government would remain the majority shareholder.
But you also have some praise, I believe.
Yeah, but I'm also delighted to see the proposal regarding this new South Island bank taking in Marrick, the Southern Buildings, the Southern Cross Building Society and CBS Canterbury, because I think we do need more New Zealand banks. It's going to be a big task for this to get the bank together, because licenses in banks aren't easily issued by the Reserve Bank. But I think that's a positive development, and hopefully it will have enough capital and will have enough credit rating to be able to establish itself as a bank and be a better lender to the agricultural sector and other parts of New Zealand as well.
Well, we'll see what happens there. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks to my guests, economic commentators Rod Oram and Brian Gaynor.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for watching. Go and have a look at our website and check out my blog. And we'll see you next week.